Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello, empaths. We hope your week is off to a fantastic start. In last week's episode, we talked about how to embrace success without feeling guilty, which I think was a really important topic, and Denise and I have gotten some great feedback from that episode. Today, we're going to take it to the next level and discuss how feeling worthy is the foundation for not only success, but also for being able to live the life we truly came here to experience. So I know most of this research is coming from you, Denise, because you just finished reading New York Times bestseller Kern Lima's book, Worthy: How to Believe You Are Enough and Transform Your Life. Jamie's backstory is pretty amazing. She's the one who started It Cosmetics. She was working as a waitress at Denny's and just had this idea to create this makeup that would cover her rosacea. And even though everyone told her no, she just believed in herself and pushed through. And what did she sell it for? $1.2 billion, I think I read.
Yeah. And just the difference she made in so many people's lives by marketing that product, not giving up, really wanting to help other women in particular at that time feel better about themselves and not to hide their true self. And that's the premise of her book, is to how to really stop hiding and step into who you are, who you came here to be, and realize you're enough just the way that you are. It's a really powerful book.
Yeah, it really is. And I think one of the things I took away from it is when she talks about the difference between self-confidence and self-worth.
Yes.
That was like a big takeaway. And we're going to dive into that a little bit later on. But do you want to start off with one of your favorite takeaways?
What I love is her writing style. She weaves a lot of stories in, her personal stories, accomplishments. She makes it very real and easy to relate to. But there's also some very useful techniques throughout the book. So it's not just a story or a self-help book. It's kind of a blend of both, which is really incredible. But one of her quotes that really got me right at the beginning was, she said, "Self-doubt, unworthiness, and fear cause us to dim our soul's light and start playing it safe, holding back, hiding, speaking only part of our truth, living only half of our life, expressing only part of our soul's true essence, craving the perception of belonging over authentic connection, craving validation and significance in a way that's defined externally, because we start to believe that these things are the only paths to love, to belonging, and to worthiness." And I think that it's really, as I said before, powerful, because this is a basis for, are you living only part of who you are, which can lead to feeling a big void in your life.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it can really, as she said, not only dim your light, but stop you from fulfilling your soul purpose. She says self-worth is the internal, deep-rooted belief that you are enough, valuable, and worthy of love and belonging just as you are. And that is so important. And she also says, in life, if you don't soar to the level of your hopes and dreams, you stay stuck at the level of your self-worth. I mean, think about that. If you have a low self-worth, you're going to stay stuck at that level. And we talk about that a lot, how you can only create for yourself what you believe you're worthy of.
Right. And you've done a lot of work and a lot of teaching with manifestation. And one of the things that Kern brings up in her book a lot is, if you don't become what you want, you become what you believe you're worthy of. And I think I was wondering, I'd love to chat about that for a second, is even if you are doing the manifestation book and you're setting the intentions and you're opening your heart and you're doing all the things, you have your vision board, would not feeling your own worthiness be a potential block to actually bringing in that abundance and manifestation?
I think it's the biggest block, if not the only block. I mean, ultimately, we are co-creators. We are creating our experience every minute with our thoughts and our beliefs about ourselves and the world around us. And the world that we're living and experiencing is nothing more than an echo of what's going on inside of us.
Oh, I
And so
love
that's
that.
why I really wanted to do that show a couple of weeks back on micro manifesting, because if you are struggling with self-worth, I think it's important to recognize that. I think there's a lot of shame in these words and feelings, right? Like, oh, I'm insecure, or I don't have a lot of self-worth, or I need to focus on self-love. Oftentimes there's shame associated with that. And if you're not comfortable enough facing your internal shame, then you're just going to push it down and not realize it. But if you can just recognize, right now, I'm not feeling super worthy of all this stuff I'm trying to manifest for myself in my life. If you can just start there and then take your goals and break them down into bite-sized pieces that feel much more manageable for you and where you are at this stage in your life, then you're going to grow on your self-worth. And I feel like I've been on a journey of self-worth my whole life, and it's very similar to any type of change we're trying to make in our life. It doesn't happen overnight. It does happen in little micro baby steps. And that's okay, because every step forward is still a step forward.
Right. And you made a really good point, is that it's not one and done. It's a lifelong process for a lot of us, especially those of us that are highly sensitive, that may have been given messages that don't align with how we view our true selves. And you mentioned earlier the difference between self-worth and self-confidence. And self-worth is the internal, deep-rooted belief that you're enough. And it's intrinsic. It's how you see yourself, how you evaluate yourself based on your qualities, your skills, your traits, how you show up in the world. Where self-confidence is external, and it's the outside world. It's what you can do. It's your abilities as a person, but it's dependent on the environment and the outside influences. So I think it's important to note that a lot of people will possess amazing self-confidence and sense of self and presence, but they may still struggle with that self-worth piece.
Yeah, and I thought that was really a crucial point that she made many times in her book, because I never really looked at it as a difference, but it truly, truly is. Because she mentions that self-confidence is how you evaluate and assess yourself and your qualities, but it's temporary. And it's based on recent accomplishments like getting the job or the promotion or the hot date. But self-worth is lasting and eternal. It's not based on how the world celebrates you or your accomplishments. And she says achievements build self-confidence, but it's really that internal love that builds self-worth.
Right. And self-worth is the foundational part that will stay consistent. So you can continue to work on your self-worth and build it, and it's going to build a stronger platform for having more self-confidence to achieve more in your life. But it really feels like horse before the cart, chicken before the egg, that you need or egg before the chicken. You need the self-worth to really embrace the self-confidence.
Yeah, but she says that you can have self-confidence and not have self-worth. And she talked about how building that business and selling it to, I think it was Estee Lauder for all that money, built her self-confidence, but she realized she still didn't have self-worth. And I watched she did a really great interview with Oprah Winfrey. And one of the things that made her realize she needed to work on self-worth, she had always had this dream and this goal of meeting Oprah Winfrey. And she becomes wealthy and successful and attains all these wonderful accolades. And she meets Oprah Winfrey, and I think they're next door neighbors now. And Oprah gives her cell phone and is like, hey, give me a call anytime. And she said that Oprah's number sat in her phone for 4 years, because even though she had all this confidence of what she'd achieved in life, she didn't have the internal self-worth. She didn't feel worthy to call Oprah on the phone. And that's one of the things that inspired her to write this book.
Right. And it reminded me of your story about being on Coast to Coast and how you had told your dad that I'm going to be on that show someday. When you were up in the middle of the night with him making peanut butter sandwiches. And then when it actually happened, it was pretty surreal.
Yeah, it was. And that was a self-worthy moment to me, because I'm not throwing shade at Coast to Coast, but Coast to Coast is not getting on Oprah Winfrey, right? But to me, it was. And so it was an internal worthy moment. It wasn't like, I mean, the average person in my life hasn't even heard of Coast to Coast, right? Like my metaphysical woo-woo friends are like, dang girl, you got on Coast to Coast. But like my sister, my neighbors were like, what? What's the show? So it was an internal self-worth thing. And I just think that's important that we have to measure ourselves not by other people's standards or expectations, but by our own standards and expectations of ourselves. We have to be our own cheerleaders.
Right. And what I loved in her work is that she talks about how much of our self-worth is based on prior rejections that we've experienced in our lives. And those can be we'll talk about the lies that we tell ourselves a little bit further out, but this is really, really important if you're the one breaking the cyclical patterns in your family of origin, or you're the one who is becoming more aware and open to different modalities, or you're taking back your power after and around rejection and potential failure, because you're shifting it, you're changing the rules. And that is big, big work, but it's also going to greatly impact your self-worth.
Yeah, it really is. And she emphasizes that our perceived flaws are actually our superpower. So for example, she talks about how her skin condition led her to create It Cosmetics. But she says this fear of rejection is a killer of dreams. And when we imagine getting rejected, what we're really saying to ourselves is, yes, that's proof that I'm not worthy or enough.
But don't you find that with the comparison mentality that so much of the world is in right now, this is even more important to feel better about ourselves, to feel stronger with the uniqueness that we're bringing onto the planet, because it's being blasted constantly. Act like everyone else, be like everyone else, don't shine your light too brightly. And now with the whole comparison with, well, I'm a creative, but AI can do it faster and cheaper, so why bother? So I think this is a really crucial time to be looking at this as people.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. And to ignore all that noise, because really everything you just said is noise that's coming at us. And it's our job as we're building self-love and self-worth to mute that noise, even if we do it for an hour a day. But we've got to just tune that out as much as we can.
Well, you've made a good point as well with be your own cheerleader. And if you're in a place in your life, it's not about age or demographic or where you are on the planet, and no one has ever really supported you or seen you for who you are or encouraged you to follow your dreams. I think that makes it even more important to turn within and say, you know what, I need to do this for myself. I can't keep letting other people define how I'm going to live this life that I've been gifted.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, I have a question for you. Do you think that self-worth can be compartmentalized? Like, for example, that you're intelligent and
Hmm.
you get a lot of accolades for being intelligent. Maybe you have a PhD, maybe you're in Mensa, maybe you wrote a research paper that got published. Do you believe that you can have self-worth with your intelligence and then not have self-worth in another compartment of your life, such as, I don't know, your social life or making friends or dating or whatever it might be? Do you think we compartmentalize our self-worth, or is it a generic, general, overall feeling?
Oh, that's a really good question. That puts me way down the rabbit hole fast. It was like a big swirly slide down the rabbit hole, because I'm thinking about the things that we might not have any doubts about in our life. Intelligence is a good one, because it is based on self-confidence that you've built from achieving, from learning, from growing, from doing all of those things. But it does ricochet back and give you a sense of self-worth. So can you take that feeling and apply it to the aspects of your life where you don't have the same level of self-confidence or self-worth? I'm not sure.
I know. I just wonder, I was thinking about that a lot because I'm always surprised at some of the people in my life who are insecure about certain things. And I'm like, really? You are? Because you know how you always look at people differently than I think they look at themselves.
Right.
I have a friend and she grew up, she's she's just a little Southern belle, and she went in beauty pageants and won this and was a cheerleader and all those beauty accolades. And when it comes to a lot of other stuff, like maybe investing or I don't know, understanding the market or we had a conversation about finances and she was like, "Oh, I know nothing about that. I just pay my bills and hope for the best and keep my fingers crossed."
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to anything to do with fashion, style, beauty, makeup, she has all the self-worth and confidence. And I just wondered, is that my misinterpretation of confidence and worth, or do we sometimes feel self-worthy in different areas of our life?
Okay, so this comes back to the messages that were given when we're younger and where there's always a seed planted. If she was encouraged and got accolades and her beauty became a true part of who she is and how she's showing up, then there would seemingly be intrinsic self-worth that the confidence feels like it would come after the self-worth because she it feels like it just came. Yes, I do feel this woman worked very hard for what she achieved, but there's also she came with a different package than some other people.
Yeah. Oh, which brings me to another great part of her book, which where she says, "You're not crazy, you're just first."
Yes, yes.
Do
Which
you
can,
want to talk about what she meant by that? Because I thought that was really cool.
well, I think that goes back to if you're the one breaking the cycle, the patterns, or you're the one stepping out of the comfort zone, or you're the one that is just brave enough to step up and say, I'm going to do it my way. That's being first is being brave. And I'm a big fan of brave.
Me too. And I like to reframe it that way because sometimes when you do try to break those patterns in your family or just try to do something different than your other family members or social group are doing, they might not call you crazy because I mean that's awful, but they might look at you, ask you questions, shed doubt, all of that stuff. And she says that the things that make us feel quirky or different are what make us worthy. You're the first ever only you. Don't dim your light to make others feel comfortable. She says you can't have an authentic relationship with anyone else unless you are willing to show up exactly as who you are.
How many times have you talked to people where they said, well, if people really knew who I was, or if they knew what was behind, and they'll show up and they have the mask and they have the persona and they have the energy behind it. And then for those of us that are highly intuitive, when you see behind that mask, it must be so painful to live that way, to the energy that would go into presenting a persona that doesn't align with who you are must be, well, I mean, we did it in a sense of, the psychic closet. We have to be cautious about who we say this to. We were in professional positions where it wasn't really common knowledge that we were as intuitive as we were, but we were still living true to who we are. So when someone is living untrue to what they're feeling on the inside, that must just be such a difficult way to be here.
Yeah, I definitely think it would be and lonely and isolating and frustrating. Because I think if you're not in living in alignment with who you authentically are, you're denying a big part of yourself. And so you might not even realize that you're doing that. And then you might wonder, why is life such a struggle? Why do I always feel on the outside looking in? And that might be a big part of it.
Right. And she does, if rejection has been a part of it, or you've come up to the starting line so many times and you've never completed something, or you've faced rejection, or you've been ostracized from something that you really wanted. She gives 4 steps in her book, the 4 R's, on ways to face that rejection. And the first one is to reveal and to ask yourself, what is your current immediate response when you experience rejection or failure? Do you start denigrating yourself? Do you start saying, oh, well, what can I expect? I never finish what I start, or I never win, or, I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm not smart enough, funny enough, etc. And both you and I have mentioned this several times, is you have to identify what it is before you can start making changes in it. And I think if it's something that's you've been told or you've experienced or that you've self-fulfilling prophecy over the years, that reveal aspect of really looking yourself in the mirror figuratively and saying, why do I talk to myself this way?
Yeah, and get to the root of it, but also everything comes down to being honest. And so when you reveal, what is your immediate response to any rejection you're having, when you really reveal it, you've got to do it through total transparent honesty. I can't tell you how many students I've had throughout the years when I was at the community college, and they were so brilliant and smart and such amazing writers. And I remember this one girl, and I kept saying to her, "So where are you going to transfer to? Like, what university are you going to transfer to?" And she said, "Oh, no, no, no. No, I can't do that. Like, no one in my family's gone to college." And I was like, "Oh, but there's like, I can, I do some advising. I can help you out with some grants and scholarships. And I know this school would love to have you in this school." And she was like, "No, no, 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 no." And I bumped into her at the grocery store. She was with her mom. It was a couple of months later. And I said to her mom, "Oh my gosh, do you have any idea how brilliant?" I said, "Oh, look who I'm talking to. Of course, you know how brilliant your daughter is. And I really hope she does apply to those colleges we've been talking about." And Denise, the mom, went off on me.
Oh,
She was like, "Who are you to put ideas into my daughter's head?" Da, 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 da. Anyway, the daughter did not apply to colleges, which is fine. You don't need a 4-year degree. This girl was like, how some people are just yearning for that knowledge and always raising their hand, and they just love all that environment. Anyway, I feel that her fear of rejection wasn't about anything to do with going to college. It was rejection of her family. Like, oh, if I step outside of this box that's been given to me by virtue of my birth, I'm not going to be accepted by my family.
which comes back to being the first
Yeah.
and
Exactly.
how it's wonderful and empowering, but it's also scary.
Yeah.
And when you were speaking of this, and I was thinking about how many times we do hold ourselves back. Or, okay, I'm going to jump back to the self-confidence, self-worth part when you mentioned, can you have self-worth in certain aspects of your life? And this statement about what's your current immediate response, there are certain aspects in my life where my response, if I have failure or rejection, will be, oh, hell no, I'm going to fight this. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to get back on the horse. Where there are other aspects of my life where I'll retreat deep in the cave and say, oh, that wasn't a smart choice to be that vulnerable. So I think that there's part of this is how does it apply to those different aspects of your life? And maybe the place where you feel the most vulnerable is where you can start identifying the true core of your self-worth issues.
Yeah, I do too. And I think sometimes rejection is, I mean, she says a couple of times, rejection is God's protection. I mean,
Right.
sometimes we have to reveal to ourselves that we're being rejected by this job or this person or this opportunity because it's just not the one for us. And other times I think we have to reveal to ourselves that we're being rejected because we're not we're not fully ready. We need to do a little bit more work. I mean, goodness, when I look back on some of like my first manuscripts that I submitted with full hopes and expectations of big yeses from publishers, I get so red with embarrassment. Like, what was I thinking that was good writing? I needed to be really honest with myself and say, you know what, you've got a lot more learning to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that is a part of learning self-worth, is being honest with yourself if you've been given a bad hand in life with, circumstances you were born into, being honest with yourself if you're just not ready to step up and into your light, being honest with yourself if you're just, really trying to hold yourself back because maybe I think some people kind of enjoy that woe is me mentality.
Oh, without a doubt. Because it can be pretty comfortable to stay in the familiarity.
Yeah, yeah.
That's our next step is redefining. So how, if you are giving yourself those negative messages or, beating yourself up over a choice or a decision or a missed opportunity, how do you create a new empowering definition to use so that when it comes up again, because it will, if you're going to live the life, shit's going to happen. There will be rejection, there will be failure, but how do you what can you tell yourself? Because this is all yours. This is not And I think that's the really kind of fun part about it. This isn't based on your children, your spouse, where you work, who your parents are. Self-worth is all yours. And you have to remind yourself that you're even brave enough to try.
I think that is so important. I had a client and she was really good friends with someone. I'm not going to use any qualifying examples other than to say that her friend became very, very famous. And they were both trying to, win and get these roles. And her friend got it first. And I remember thinking, wouldn't that be hard, Denise? I've always thought about that. Like what does Jennifer Lopez's sister think? Like it would be so hard to like watch that. And I kept reminding her, you're showing up for these auditions. Like I couldn't do that. Just showing up for that's scary, brave stuff. Like just keep showing up. Your time will come. And let me tell you, it came. And she was ready. And now she's sharing all the accolades. But it was years of her looking at people, getting to that, imaginary finish line, whatever, of whatever we deem success in our certain field. It was years of her watching that happen to other people. And she had to keep reminding herself, I'm showing up because this is important to me. And I think
Right.
that's part of redefining it is exactly what you said. You were brave enough to try it in the first place.
Truly, what's the point in being here if you're just going to stay stuck? There's no growth in that. There's no living in that. Um, and I'm not saying go do something impulsive and then say, oh, why did I make that choice? But when you get to the point where you can revisit and reframe the past experiences so that you can look at the rejections and failures that still feel significant in your life, it might be you're able to rework that in a way that will help prevent you from replaying the loop tape again. So if you have said, oh, well, every time I try to, we'll use getting published as an example, because so many people submit, nobody wants their work, they can't get an agent, but they keep trying. Is there something exactly what you just said a minute ago of you look back at that work and you believed in it at the time, but in retrospect, it needed a little more polishing, but it was a catalyst to get you to keep trying.
Right. Which is why rejection is sometimes protection. And so we have to remember that. And I think that's part of revealing it, redefining it, and then revisit and reframing it where, you're looking at those past experiences and trying to tell yourself a different story because the story we tell ourselves about our life is the story that we're going to live.
That's it. We
That's
can
it.
convince ourselves of anything.
Yeah. I made my sister laugh so hard yesterday because when as I've mentioned on the show many times, I've been through some really, really yucky experiences in my life. And I remember when my former husband was in the hospital fighting for his life, and it was so dramatic and overwhelming and traumatizing, and all this stuff kept happening. And every day I would walk into the hospital and the doctor would tell me he's not going to survive the day. And I remember saying to my sister, I feel like I'm starring in my very own Lifetime movie, and this is not good, And so it just became like a running joke. And so this year, I've had a lot of good luck and good things happen to my life. And I said to her, I went from starring in a Lifetime movie to a Hallmark movie. And it reminded me of that dream I had with my guide, where we were walking in a Blockbuster video store. For our young listeners, you used to have to get in your car and drive to a video store and pick out the movie you wanted to watch. And in this dream, we're walking through the video store, and he said, he pointed out the drama section, the horror section, the romance section, all of that. And he said, this is your life. Choose what movie you want to live in. And I think we do that with our thoughts, with our beliefs, with our sense of worthiness. And that's why I think it is important to follow these 4 R's of transcending rejection,
And
reveal, redefine, revisit, and revel.
right. And when you were in the thick of it, because I'm sure there are people that are very much in the thick of it right now that are listening to this would either be a lifeline or it would be, you can't understand the pain that my life is in right now, and none of this matters. So I think being gentle with ourselves and realizing that if you're in a situation right now that feels like there's no way out, be gentle with yourself and start small. It goes back to the micro manifesting, is find some tiny thing that will give you a sense of hope and a sense of worth.
Yes, and just my opinion, I could be wrong, but if you know someone who's in one of those dramatic, traumatic, overwhelming seasons of their life, don't give them this book. Like if someone gave me this book when I was going through all my ups and downs, I wouldn't have even marinated in those words, because I wasn't ready for it and I wasn't willing and able. I didn't have the emotional space in my head to fully digest all of that. I had to do small things. And I think for every one of us, when we're going through hard times, those small things that lift us up are going to be different. For me, it was meditation and prayer and reading my little angel books. That helps me so much, reading uplifting positive stories. But to read a whole self-help book of like, you got this girl, no, I would not have been in that mood. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly. Exactly. Because it comes back to this being a really unique individual connection with yourself. And you're the only one that knows if you're ready to do this deep dive because it's not, I think it can be tiny steps, it can be sequential building blocks. It doesn't have to be all at once.
No, it shouldn't be all at once. That would be overwhelming.
Right.
Okay, I have a homework assignment to give everyone.
Oh,
Okay, so she says in this book, let me read from my notes. She says, whatever emotion you associate with rejection is how you define rejection. So I asked a lot of friends this week, what emotion do you associate with rejection? And do you know that almost everyone I asked had a different answer?
what were some of
Yeah.
the answers?
Shame was a fairly common answer.
Yeah.
Guilt was another one. Self-loathing was another one. And fear was another one. When people are rejected, one person said, I just feel this overwhelming sense of fear, like I'm going to be stuck in this loop of rejection forever. Another one said stupid. I feel stupid when I'm rejected.
Yeah. And it's funny because I asked a couple people as well, and someone said humiliation.
Mm.
And I thought but those are all very powerful emotions that you just read off.
Yeah, but they're all different in their own
Hmm.
way. And so whatever emotion you personally associate with rejection is how you are going to define rejection in your life.
There are some commonalities, and she has several chapters in this book that talk about how to unlearn the lies that we tell ourselves. And the first one is my weight impacts my worth. And I mean, I have been thin and fit. I've been heavy. I've been in between. Weight has been an issue. It's a cyclical pattern in my family of origin. I don't have the health issues that many people in my biological family have because of weight. But I do know that how many times have people limited themselves from, I can't go to the beach, or I don't want to go to that party because I'm too uncomfortable in my own body, or this is the only way people see me. And if I don't have the latest fashion or the new shoes, I can't do that to myself. So this is a huge one, huge issue is, are you letting your physical weight define how you're existing on the planet?
Yeah, that's a really big one. And I think it's important to really wrestle with that for a long time because again, that's not an overnight one. That's one where you have to really focus on gratitude. I know after I would give birth and, you're in the shower looking at your body going, wow, that's different. And I remember just trying really hard saying thank you to every part of my body. Thank you for growing a child. Thank you for helping me birth a child. And I would thank my legs for walking and I put my hand over my heart and I thank it for pumping. And I would do that every morning when I was in the shower. And I definitely was faking it till I make it. I got to be honest. But I did it. And I think it helped a lot.
This is where the self-worth and the self-confidence can go hand in hand, because if you're improving your sense of self, your self-worth through feeling better about your physical body, then it's going to give you the confidence to put yourself into situations that you might not normally put yourself into.
Yeah. But maybe it's not even, I think what I'm trying to say is it's not even about feeling better about your body. It's feeling grateful for your body,
Mm-hmm. I
you
agree.
know, because I think we're so mean to ourselves.
Well, and anyone who has had any serious health issues and you speak to them after they're on the other side of it, that's always their number one thing. I'm healthy. That's what matters. Nothing else matters in my life. My body is is better. I'm stronger. I feel it becomes number one on the list.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Number two on hers is I should only be seen when I'm happy. I think I have a friend like that. I do. Because we have a friend in our little friend group who gets a lot of headaches. And I'm always like, do you have a headache again? Or are you just not feeling up to, coming out to lunch?
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and I have another friend who insists on, which I think is smart, and I've now adopted this, but she insists on driving herself to any social event so she can leave when she wants to leave.
Isn't that normal?
I know. But that feeling that we always have to be up and positive and buoyant and all of, we did a show on toxic positivity. I mean, that's not a good thing.
No, but
But if you're getting celebrated in life for being the social butterfly, the extrovert, the funny one, I think this would be definitely a lie that would impact a lot of people.
but it comes back to, and I'm not just bashing social media every show, but if you see everyone posting these little tiny snippets of how perfect their life is, and you don't see all the behind the scenes reality of what their life is, that can really instill that sense of, oh, I have to present as my life is as golden as everyone else's.
Right, right. Which goes back to comparison, the thief
Yeah.
of joy. The third lie is I don't deserve better. Ooh, that's that's a heavy one.
Well, there's a quote right at the beginning of that chapter by Steve Furtick, and it says, are you not letting new people love you because of how old people have hurt you? And I thought, oh, holy shit, that's deep.
That is deep.
But it's true. Do we limit ourselves or how we feel about ourselves based on how people have treated us? And for those who have been with in hostile environments or with a controlling narcissistic partner or have dealt with been in a codependent situation where someone had severe addiction issues, I think that that can really be a part of it, a big part of it.
Yeah. And sometimes we just don't even understand or recognize that we have that internal lie voicing itself in our head.
Right. Because you have to stay within your own comfort zone. And if, I've used this line with a lot of people over the years, is to be in a healthy relationship, you have to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And if someone has had to be strong and resilient and take care of themselves, that is a high mountain to climb. And to find someone that will appreciate that and honor that and give someone the space that they need to take the baby steps towards trust. I think that that goes hands in hand with you building a stronger foundation of self-worth is who the people you choose who you surround yourself with.
Yeah, that's everything. The
Um,
next one is I don't have anything special to offer.
and
Oh, I had a friend say that to me just last month, and I wanted to just shake her silly. I did. I really did. She was like, I don't really understand. I don't know what my sole purpose is. I don't feel like I have anything special to offer. And she is just one of the brightest lights I know. She makes everyone laugh. She's so warm and thought she's just one of the best people I know. And I couldn't believe that those words came out of her mouth. I mean, sometimes like I said before, the way we see ourselves is so drastically different from how other people see us, and I hope I talked good sense into her. But I mean, that's something I know, like you were saying before with AI. I mean, there's so many times where you're like, what am I going to say now? What am I going to say that's different or
right.
unique or special?
the whole premise of all the stories have been told, but they haven't been told by you. They don't have your spin, your perspective, your life experiences, which comes back to your whole little soul light is unique to anyone else. Out of the billions of us on the planet, there's only one soul light that matches with you. And I think
Yes.
that's pretty damn incredible.
Yeah. One thing she says a lot in that book is you are the first ever only you.
Yes.
I like that. You're the first ever only you, and you do have something unique. And I also heard her say, I believe one of the most prevalent forms of cancel culture is one no one talks about, and it's us canceling ourselves before we even try.
And which comes back to the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next lie is I need to please them to love me. Oh,
Um,
well, if you were
mm,
raised with conditional love, that might really ring true.
right. And the people pleaser gene and
Yep.
family dynamics or relationships, or that's a huge, huge, huge ones. But I sometimes think that we get caught in that worry loop of what someone else will think of us, or what if I don't show up, or I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And if we've had just conditional relationships, that can be very limiting with our self-worth.
And the next one is if I stand out, I'll get kicked out. Oh, that reminds me of Good Will Hunting. Remember
Oh,
when Matt Damon, Ben Affleck has that conversation with Matt Damon, and he's like, "You got to take this. You got to go. You got to off. Take this job offer." And he says, Matt Damon basically says, "But you guys are my family, and I can't leave this family." And I love that scene. And Ben Affleck's like, "No, you got to go." But I think that is a common refrain a lot of people will hear. If I stand out, I'll get kicked out.
it's a middle school or high school mentality. And I'm not being derogatory with that, but I spoke with someone recently and they were saying this clique at their work environment and how they're ganging up and they're the popular ones in the work environment and they kind of it's high school, it's middle school, it's that demographic of if you're different, we're not going to let you in the club. So I think people will try to fit in so that they're not ostracized or lonely, but that's a huge, huge impact on your self-worth if you lessen yourself to fit someone else's standards of how to fit in.
Yeah, but to me, it's just like the ugly duckling. Those just aren't your ducks. Those aren't your swans. I remember when I was a new mom and I was trying to find like my mom friends, and I joined this one this mom's prayer group, and they were super nice, and I really enjoyed going. But, you know, Denise, you and I both love to swear, and I've been known to say, God damn it, and Jesus Christ. And let me tell you, those ladies were not having it. And
No.
And if I talked about all my spiritual stuff or like I'm trying to manifest that, they'd be like, well, let's just pray about it. And I was like, I don't know. Mm-mm. And I remember when I joined the meditation group at my local metaphysical store, those women were so different than anyone I'd ever been friends with. And yet I immediately felt understood and accepted. So I think sometimes if you stand out and get kicked out, that's a good thing because that's not your tribe.
Hmm. Right. I mean, the next one is I'm an imposter and not enough on my own, which I think goes hand in hand with standing out. Is will am I really capable of doing this or being this or seeing myself or and I think the imposter one go can link back to being told, you're not enough or don't get a big head or why would you think you can do it better than someone else or all of those old messages that might have come through when we were younger.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, like the next lie, if I'm me, I won't be loved.
Right.
I think a lot of that starts in childhood when if you are raised in a family that loves you on conditions, the condition that, you fulfill this role or this label or this expectation, then I think that's a lie you've probably internalized.
And Brene Brown, we all are very familiar with Brene Brown, and her take on that is you either walk into your story and own your truth, or you live outside of your story hustling for your own worthiness. If I'm me, I won't be loved. And then the labels are permanent was her last chapter on unlearning the lies we tell ourselves. And that's believing what you've been told that you are. You're a klutz. You'll never make it. You're not smart enough. Your sister is the pretty one. Your brother is the stronger one. You're not cut out to be a manager, or you're not creative enough to write the book. I think all of those things, those labels, we have to, and her, you and I have joked about this and brought it up in many, many episodes about Louise Hay and the mirror work. And that's one of the ways to start to work with all of this stuff is to look yourself in the mirror and start to make a connection with who you are and what you want. And that's painful sometimes.
It's painful, awkward, and uncomfortable, but a lot of good things come from allowing ourselves to feel painful, awkward, and uncomfortable. And we got to push through to really show up for ourselves. And for any really young people listening, anyone in their 20s, I know if I were listening to this in my 20s, I'd be like, I don't know, labels are kind of accurate for the people I know. But when you live on this earth longer than that, and you look at yourself and the people in your life and how they've changed over the years, you start to see, wow, labels really aren't permanent. We really do change, evolve, and grow. And I think it's important for young listeners to just trust that and to watch that in some of the older people they know.
Right. And this is with age comes wisdom or not, that a lot of people that are professing to be individuals are following the pack right now in order to be seen as, but they're actually just emulating other people's form of individuality.
Mm,
But
that's so true.
because it comes back to am I being worthy of being seen and heard and understood? So if you're really struggling with acknowledging who you are and how you present in the world, which goes back to that again, if you focus on letting someone else know that you see them, so it's Newton's third law of motion. For every action of force in nature, there's an equal or opposite reaction. When you truly see someone else, it can be a beautiful, beautiful catalyst to start to see yourself. Haven't you found that when you say something genuine and true and kind to someone, and you see the light come in their eyes, like, oh my gosh, I've always believed that about myself, but no one's ever told me that.
Mm.
That's a beautiful, beautiful gift to share with someone.
Oh, it really is. It's the best. Some of the strategies she has for unlearning these lies is she says you have to ask yourself, do I believe that lie?
Right.
That's important. Do I believe that lie? Sometimes we're just telling ourselves these things over and over. We don't pause to think, do I even believe this anymore? And then you have to ask, how is this lie serving me? Because sometimes these lies are serving us, because sometimes we do want to be held back because we're afraid. And so we have, again, it goes back to being totally authentic, transparent, and honest. And she says, you're the main character of your life and of this lie. You get to decide, do you want to unlearn this lie? And then you have to reframe it. And she says, again, I am the first, only ever me, and I'm going to live in alignment with my purpose. When you change the story of you, the story you tell yourself about your life, then your whole world changes. And she says, a calling unexpressed inside of you leaves you feeling anguished and alone, which is so
Uh,
true.
it is so true. And I'm thinking about different chapters of our lives. People, and when you mention people that are younger or in their 20s that are listening to this would have a different perception than someone in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, or 70s. We have a really wide range in our audience, but there's no timeline on doing this work. There's no, it's not too late or too early to start to accept yourself for who you really are, because that's the only way you're going to make the impact you really want to make in the world.
Yeah.
And to I think there is a value in being comfortable in your own skin and who you are that far surpasses any accolades we can get from someone else.
Yeah, because again, I don't even believe that we're here to make an impact on the world, you know? I mean, I guess we are. I feel like we're here to grow our soul and
Right.
to use these experiences that we have in this lifetime, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the miraculous, to strengthen and brighten our light. And in doing so, that will leave an impact on the world. But it all starts within us. And that's why self-worth is so crucial. What are the five shortcuts to self-worth that she talks about?
Well, two of them I mentioned, doing the mirror work and feeling that you're worthy of being seen, heard, and understood. And then she mentions a real starting point is loving and appreciating the beauty and the positive in the things around you. So when you intentionally make a point to see the good around you, it becomes a mindset. This comes, when people are set on, oh, I've been watching the news, I've been watching the horror in the world, and you'll hear them say, there's nothing positive, there's no hope, there's no reframe that because you're internalizing it and it's going to impact your own mindset about yourself. And there was a joy study commissioned by Ulta Beauty that found, in spite of how common negative self talk was more than 5,000 people, 67% said it's part of how they function and that they didn't even notice they're doing it. It numbing ourselves out. And I think we do the same thing with the external stimuli that we're constantly getting hit in. It becomes our normal. And we forget that there's hope and peace and humanity. And I'm not being all Pollyanna about that, but it really is a thing.
No,
Um,
no, it really is.
and she goes on to say the one of my favorites, the power and impact of journaling, of writing and writing yourself through it. Really, that's a quiet time with yourself to get clear on, why do I feel this way? You can write it and burn it, you can shred it, you can keep it and revisit it. But I think giving voice to, and for some people that may be more comfortable sharing that with a dear friend or with a counselor or with a therapist, but there's something to be said in writing it down or sharing it, what you really believe in your heart is around your worthiness issues. The third was, higher intentions, having higher self-worth. If you focus on the good intentions behind the things that you do and say, even little things, it leads to a stronger self-worth. It's, taking the high road, doing the right thing, paying attention and acknowledging yourself is the key, and giving yourself credit for your own good intentions. So, because that's going to lead to more positive self-talk, which will help override the negative thoughts and lies that we tend to tell ourselves from the past or as our default. So that feeling of when you may step out of your comfort zone and take the high road, and you give yourself a little pat on the back. Maybe we all need a few more pats on the back.
Yeah, it goes back to being your own cheerleader.
Right. So I think that these, as we mentioned, these are all little stepping stones towards improving your self-worth. But I can't emphasize enough, and I know you'll agree with me on this. Please, please be gentle with yourself. You're undoing a lifetime of stories you've told yourself or that you've been told. And any little step is going to make a big difference.
Well, she says your self-worth becomes your ceiling.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. You can only achieve and create and manifest to the level of which you believe you're worthy. And so it really does become your ceiling. Okay, this thing popped up on one of my social media pages this morning, Denise, and I would just love your opinion on it because I think it does have to do with worthiness, but it just made me think. It says, buy land in secret, build the house in secret, then have the party with the public. Go on dates in secret, propose in private, then get married in front of a crowd. Let your enemies only see your reality, never your vision, or you will have division. In a chess game, you don't talk, you just act. The only time you speak when playing chess is to say checkmate. Life is like chess. Don't broadcast your intentions. Act in silence, keep achieving. Your achievements are your checkmate. And something about that felt kind of negative to me, especially when it mentions enemies. Like, I don't really look at my life in terms of friends and enemies. You know what I mean?
Oh, But that aligns beautifully with what we're talking about, because if you've shared your truth, your self-worth, your dreams, your visions, and someone has wanted to hold you back or has put a negative twist on it or has reiterated all of those old lies that we've told ourselves over and over again, that is an enemy stance, and it's going to keep you stuck where you've been. But
Yeah.
if you actually say, you know what, I'm just going to keep this to myself and then I'll share it, because you're bolstering your sense of self, your self-worth, and your confidence all at the same time. I
Well,
love that.
do you, okay, because I did too. And then I was like, I don't know, because I do feel like it's important to talk and share and be honest about what you're working on. But then I do feel like we do live in this invisible world of energy, you know? And we do swim around in this sea of emotions and intentions and thoughts from other people and our past experiences and past versions of ourselves that are all working together to help us manifest our life in every single day. And I remember with the other unpublished manuscripts I mentioned earlier on in the show, I mean, yeah, they did need a lot of work and I did need to focus on my writing. But I remember I talked about all of those books to everyone I knew. And when
Mm-hmm.
I started writing The Awake Dreamer, I didn't tell anybody. Like when I was working on getting an agent and, writing the first book that got me the agent, and then I got the contract for The Awake Dreamer, I didn't talk about it until I had all of it done. And I find it interesting that that's the book that made it into the world,
Right.
the one I didn't share about. And again, I feel uncomfortable with that because I never want to believe that anyone is like holding me back or holding anyone else back. But I don't know. So it just made me think.
Well, there's a realistic part to that as well, though, that people will appropriate things that aren't theirs, and that's not being negative, it's being honest. So
Hmm.
if you had shared the whole premise of your book, The Awake Dreamer, and what it was about, and then someone said, "Ooh, that's a great idea, and I can get it out even faster," that would have crushed you, and it would have really impacted your ability to put your second book out, it would
Yeah, but
seem.
not even that. Like I remember with one of my other manuscripts, what a writing friend said, "Oh, you're younger. You can't get published first before me."
Oh my.
Yeah, and when someone said something and they're like, "Ooh, was that an outside thought?" And we just kind of looked at each other and I was like, "Oh, okay." So I don't I feel like sometimes it's just that internal tug, that invisible tug of what people want and expect from us. And so maybe some of the inner self-worthiness that we're working on, or the light that we're trying to grow inside of us, maybe like a seed deep in the dark earth, we do need to keep it secret while we're doing this deep internal work.
or or keep it close with people that we trust and love and who we know will encourage us to go after the dream.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This is a beautiful piggyback to the guilt without success. On our next episode, we're going to take it to the another level with how to cultivate self-love to work hand in hand with the self-worth.
Can't wait for that show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Denise, tell them the name of the book we've been discussing one more time.
It's by Jamie Kern Lima, and it's Worthy: How to Believe You're Enough and Transform Your Life.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful week. And remember, as always, to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.